Hello, my name is Meg Turner, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Medina. Medina is a 15-year-old girl from a rural village in the Philippines, beginning her second year of school in the United States. Her native language is Tagalog, and she lives with her aunt and uncle, who, despite working long hours, are incredibly supportive of her education. Medina is able to speak English fluently, but she does still struggle with some components of the English language. Medina has a pretty solid academic foundation from her schooling in her home country, and Medina and her family hope that she will ultimately finish school and become a nurse in the United States. So with that, let's take a look at part 1, Tagalog, Medina's first language. Tagalog is a language that is spoken in the Philippines. Its standardized form is known as Filipino. Filipino and English are the two official languages of the Philippines. Tagalog belongs to the Malayo-Polynesian language family, and there are about 90 million speakers of Tagalog worldwide. Tagalog is spoken primarily in the central portion of the Philippines, and you can see that highlighted in the red on this map here, the middle map. It has all those red portions are where Tagalog is primarily spoken in the country. According to census data from 2000, Tagalog is the 6th most common language in the United States, and it's spoken by over 1 million citizens here in the U.S. So where are we now in regards to Medina's second language acquisition? On to part 2. Medina is, in my belief, in the 4th stage of second language acquisition, also known as the intermediate fluency stage. During this stage of language acquisition, communicating in the second language is fluent, but there will be gaps in vocabulary knowledge and some unknown expressions. There are still errors being made on the part of the speaker, but the speaker is able to demonstrate higher order thinking in the second language, such as offering an option or solving a problem. This phase usually begins 6 months to a year after the second language acquisition process begins, but it's dependent given how long the first 3 stages take, and it can last for 1 to 3 years, depending on the learner. That information comes from Pinegar and Timmett in 2019. I believe that Medina fits well into this category because despite the fact that she is speaking fluently, she does have some gaps in her knowledge that are causing her hardships in expressing herself. I will discuss the issues she is having in learning English later in this presentation when I discuss how her native language of Tagalog and English compare phonetically and the issues it causes in language acquisition. But for now, I will use a simple example of a common error Medina is making to back up my decision of her second language acquisition category. Currently, Medina is continually mixing up gender pronouns for he and she. This is an error that can greatly impact the ability of other English speakers to fully comprehend Medina at times, and it acts as an example of the gaps in her current second language knowledge. However, there are several factors that are working in Medina's favor for her second language acquisition. For one thing, she is not affected by many of the factors that Schumann posits attribute to social distance. Medina plans to stay in the United States indefinitely, so she has ample motivation to learn English. And while there is a vibrant Filipino community in her United States home, it is small, so she is not affected by enclosure. She also has a positive attitude and is a highly motivated learner. Additionally, because Medina came to the United States with a solid academic foundation, she must have advanced fluency in her native language. This will allow Medina to benefit from transfer. The textbook, Understanding Language Structure, Interaction, and Variation, has the following to say about transfer. Transfer is the name given to the phenomenon of bringing the rules of an old language to the rules of a new one. This will help facilitate Medina's English acquisition in the case of cognates, otherwise known as words that are similar in two languages. However, it has also interfered with her language acquisition as well, and she has struggled with applying the word order of her native language to English. So using some of the rules from Tagalog into English in ways that they don't necessarily apply has been an issue. So if I had one of those big Six Flags Over Texas style "You Are Here" stickers to put on her second language acquisition map, I would have it right here at intermediate fluency. There's one more stage, advanced fluency, and that will come as she fills in those gaps in her current knowledge. So, on to part 3, the part of this presentation that I know you've all been waiting for and probably the most exciting, the linguistic comparison, Tagalog to English. So, Tagalog is interesting because it's been heavily influenced by English, and that's due to colonization on the part of the United States through the early 20th century. And it's also been heavily influenced by Spain, which were its first colonial power to come in and influence the country. So, like English, Tagalog is an alphabetic language. It consists of 28 letters, including all 26 of the English alphabet, as well as the Velar Nasar Naiwan and the Spanish Ñ. So Tagalog's writing system is actually a mix of the English and Spanish writing system. It is comprised entirely of English and Spanish letters. Tagalog is not a tonal language, and it's highly phonetic, meaning that most words are spelled according to how they sound. Tagalog consists of 21 phonemes altogether, 5 vowel phonemes and 18 consonant phonemes. That information comes from the Portland State University Speech and Hearing Sciences Department, and it was updated in 2021. English, by contrast, has 44 phonemes, as we all have learned in this class, 20 vowel phonemes, and 25 consonant phonemes. And that information comes out of the textbook by Brown, Attardo, and Vigliotti, 2014, and they're from the charts on pages 20 and 21. There are 9 consonant phonemes that occur in English, but do not occur in Tagalog. V, j, z. Voiced and voiceless th, sh, z, ch, and z. Additionally, English phonology includes several more vowels and diphthongs than Tagalog. One thing that may attribute to challenges faced by native Tagalog speakers learning English is the fact that differences in place of articulation exist even within similar phonemes. Despite these phonological system differences, overall the phonological systems of Tagalog and English are fairly similar. Again, this is due to the influence that English has had on the language. So just to compare really quickly, I thought it was interesting. So I got, this is right over here on the left. You can see the consonant phoneme chart for Tagalog, and on the right, the consonant phoneme chart for English. So while there are some differences, especially in place of articulation, as far as what's, noise, voice, nasal, lateral, all those types of things, they are quite similar. So I thought adding them here would be pretty interesting for you to see. So let's move on and talk about part 4, problems that she may have in English resulting from her native language. So most of the problems that native Tagalog speakers will face when learning English are mainly centered around syntax differences between the two languages. As I stated in part 3, there are phonological system differences between the two languages, such as differences in place of articulation that you can expect to trip up Tagalog speakers in their English pronunciations. And you can see how these phonological differences have impacted Medina's English speech and some of the common errors she is currently making, such as saying ding or ting in place of thing, because remember, again, the voiceless sound does not exist in Tagalog. or the place of articulation errors that cause her to say terrain rather than train. However, a lot of the more serious comprehension limiting errors are due to structural differences and grammar transfer issues that cause common problems for these specific English language learning students. So without further ado, let's dive into some of these grammar transfer issues that can give some additional insight into Medina's specific errors. A common mistake made by native Tagalog speakers learning English is the omission of the plural marker S. This can be seen in the example in Medina's case study. The mitten are lost. In Tagalog, nouns do not change form to show the plural, so this is causing Medina to struggle with English plural rules. Tagalog speakers also tend to avoid using apostrophe S to describe possession because the use of a prepositional phrase to express possession reflects the only structure or a more common structure in Tagalog. Another common error exists in count versus non-count nouns and the use of plural forms for English non-count nouns. An example in Medina's case study of this is the following sentence. The lunches is good. Nouns that are count and non-count differ between English and Tagalog. Tagalog speakers also tend to have issues with the placement of articles, specifically the omission of an article. Native Tagalog speakers tend to make this English transfer error because articles are either lacking the distinction between a and the, and they are not paralleled in Tagalog. Tagalog speakers may also struggle with overusing articles, and this is because some articles are used in Tagalog in places where they are not in English. So they struggle both with omitting and overusing, given the differences in articles in the two languages. Now, remember that error I brought up earlier when discussing Medina's current stage of language acquisition? Don't worry, I'll remind you. Medina has been struggling with pronouns. Specifically, she mixes up he and she. Well, it turns out that she's not alone. This is a common grammar transfer issue for native Tagalog speakers. The reasoning is as such. The third person pronoun in Tagalog is gender-free. The same pronoun is used where English uses masculine, feminine, and neutral pronouns, resulting in confusion of pronoun forms in English. Tagalog speakers also tend to omit the pronoun one from sentences. This is because adjectives can be used on their own in Tagalog, whereas English often refers to a noun or one. Medina has also been making errors in subject-verb agreement, such as in the following example, the boys is late. In Tagalog, verb forms do not change to indicate the number of the subject. Tagalog speakers also tend to omit the S in the present tense, third-person agreement, because there is no subject-verb agreement in Tagalog. Another problem brought up in Medina's case study is her avoidance of present perfect where it should be used, and this is due to the fact that the verb form either doesn't exist or has a different function in Tagalog. The case study also mentions that Medina has been struggling to determine which words are verbs and which are nouns in sentences, and she continually mixes up the subject-verb order when speaking and writing in English. The reasoning for this is that in Tagalog, the word order is the same in some questions and statements, depending on the context. There are additional errors that are common for Tagalog speakers learning English, such as omission of text markers, omission of helping verbs in negative statements, use of past continuous for reoccurring action in the past, and confusion of transitive and intransitive verbs that Medina is not making according to the case study or are not brought up in the case study, but they should be watched for and understood nonetheless. All of these common grammar error transfer issues can be found on pages A12 through A19 of On Our Way to English. It is important to remember that phonological errors and grammar transfer issues are a normal part of the language acquisition process. Totally natural. All right. So moving on to part 5, Teacher recommendations. As I stated in part 4, many of the errors Medina is making are a natural part of the language acquisition process and will clear up gradually as she continues to be in an immersive English environment. As such, it is important that the teacher does not get too bogged down in correcting errors, especially not at the risk of taking away valuable instruction time. However, Medina does struggle with some errors that absolutely warrant explicit instruction on the part of the teacher, specifically her errors in the subject-verb placement and agreement. One recommendation I have for her teacher in working with Medina on this is utilizing printed cards to help Medina learn about creating powerful sentences. In Jessica Luce's excellent ELL blog, she has downloadable sentence cards that I think would absolutely help Medina, and I have put them here actually. Using the cards and the corresponding word bank found here, Medina would work on how to structure sentences correctly. This is a twofer, so to speak, because it allows Medina to simultaneously practice subject, verb, agreement, and placement, and it also allows for her to learn about what nouns and verbs are in English so she can get a better grasp on that, all at the same time. The teacher should correct Medina when appropriate, but the most important thing she must do is ensure that her classroom is an environment where Medina feels safe enough to take risk in her language learning process. Medina needs to see her teacher as an ally in learning English. Additionally, the teacher needs to remember that content cannot be put on the back burner to focus on correct pronunciation or grammar issues. Otherwise, she'll risk Medina falling behind her peers. This teacher should expect to see a great deal of progress from Medina in her English abilities throughout the school year, as Medina continues to acquire English through the natural acquisition and targeted explicit instruction. So I know that we weren't supposed to go too far into lesson plans, but I just thought that these cards and the word bank and the powerful sentence activity that was found on Jennifer Luce's blog was just so applicable to Medina's particular situation that I thought I would share it. These are all of the references I used when creating this presentation. And I also went ahead and linked my script here at the bottom in case anyone wants to review it, because I felt like that was probably a lot of information to be gone over solely in a video. So if you would prefer to read it or look back to anything in particular, you can open up my script here and use it as you see fit. Thanks.